All right, Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Yevamos Daf Kuftawa, Yevamos 104. Today's Daf Yomi, we're going to start with the Mishnah on 104a. The Mishnah says, Cholza b'layla. Let's say a person does the chalitza at night. Man comes to the woman and does the chalitza at night. So under those circumstances, we say chalitza sakshera. The Tanna Kama says it's okay. Rabbi Eliezer opposed, so Rabbi Eliezer disqualifies it. Also, bismol, let's say you do the chalitza with his left foot. Chalitza sapsua, it's disqualified. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer is machshir. Rabbi Eliezer says it's okay with the left foot. So we're going to see what the Gemara is talking about. The Gemara says, "Lema b'hakamiflagei." Let us say that this is the nature of the dispute. What's the nature of this dispute? Mar savar makshinin rivim l'negayim. One is of the opinion that we're going to compare rivim to negayim, as we just discussed with our chavra here in person. This is from the end of Parashas Shoftim, and it says that you have to bring the riv called nega to the court. And just like the nega refers to the tzaras, that when a kohen looks at the tzaras, it has to be done during the day. So to the riv, the matters that the court decides of what's permitted, what's prohibited, i.e. chalitza, that has to be done during the day. So that's why Rabbi Eliezer disqualifies it, because the chalitza is done. The chalitza is compared to a riv; it has to be done during the day. Whereas the Rabbanan don't compare it, and therefore they say it's okay. Umar savar lo makshinan rivim l'negayim. But the other opinion is no, we don't compare them. That's the Rabbanan. That's why they say that it could be done at night. The makshinan, so the Gemara says no. Or the kuli alma, no. Everybody's in the position. Lo makshinan rivim l'negayim. Everyone is of the position that we don't compare rivim l'negayim. That's not the source for Rabbi Eliezer. Even Rabbi Eliezer says we don't compare it. The makshinan, because if we would actually be comparing rivim to negayim, if we would actually be comparing it, then guess what? We wouldn't even be able to do the Gemar Din at night. So what is Rabbi Eliezer saying? Because everybody's of the position that a Dine Mamonos case, let's say you're adjudicating a matter, and then you start the proceedings at 3:00, and next thing you know, on a winter day, it's already 5:00. You have to stop? No, the Dine Mamonos, we let you conclude it at night. But if we compare it to the Tzaras, we wouldn't be allowed to even complete it at night. So we see that it's not really comparable to the night. So the Gemara says, so therefore, what's the reason why Rabbi Eliezer disqualifies it, whereas the Rabbanan say it's okay? So one is on the position that chalitza is like the beginning of the judgment, meaning to say that chalitza is like the beginning of din. And as Rashi reminds us, we learned out in the Gemara in Sanhedrin that the beginning of the judgment can be done during the day, and so therefore, since it's like the beginning of din, you could start during the day. Umar savar chalitza k'gmar din damya. The chalitza is the concluding ceremony. What would be the concept of saying chalitza is like the beginning of the din? That's the first act. But why does But whereas Rabbi Eliezer, who says it's disqualified, so Rabbi Eliezer says since it's the gmar din, it's disqualified if it starts at night. But the Rabbanan who say it's kigmar din, it's like the conclusion. They say the beginning of the din. When does the din start? It starts maybe when the moment she falls. As the Gemara is going to discuss that now. Rabbi Baruchia katuspa avad uvda ben mok ubiyachidi ubalayla. So Rabbi Baruchia from the place called Katuspa, that sounds like it's in your neck of the woods. Lincoln. Katuspa sounds like it's near Persia. Katuspa. I don't know. It sounds to me like it is. So we have studying with us today a great hero and an Iranian dissident who now wants to become Jewish with us. We're not going to say his name to protect his identity because this will be on YouTube, and he is very well known on YouTube, and we don't want anybody to know his identity on YouTube. So just for our own internal purposes, you could come and meet him in person, but not on YouTube because this will be recorded. So Rabbi Baruchia Katuspa Avad Uvda B'Mok. He did a incident, i.e. he did the chalitza with a mook. What's a mook? That is a felt shoe. And he did it biyachidi. He did it in front of one judge only. And he also did it. So the idea of the felt is really is not leather, but felt is actually comes from a sheep. So it's a little different. It's not a vegetable. Do they translate it as felt there? Yeah, so felt is an animal product. So it's interesting. So he did it with felt. He did it with yachidi, meaning to say he did it without a cord of 3, and he did it at night. So he ruled like the Rabbanim. So Amar Shmuel, Kama Rav Guvrai to Avaki Yachidai. So Shmuel said this. Rashi says in a lashon genai, meaning in a disrespectful manner. Look how this rabbi is, that he's ruling like an individual. Like, you're not supposed to do that. He's following an individual's position. Why should he be following such an individual's position? He shouldn't be following a minority position. So by the way, I realize I put that out there to our group on YouTube. And when we finish the recording today, I'll introduce you to Lincoln, and then I'll stop the recording so he won't be on YouTube. And that way you guys will be able to meet him. So when this person came and did all these 3 things, when Rabbi Bar Chia did these 3 things, he did it with a mok, he did it b'yachidi, and he did it b'layla. Shmuel said to him, look how arrogant you are. You think you're such a great rabbi that you follow an individual position. So my kasha. So the Gemara is asking, what was Shmuel's problem with this? Imuk, if it was the fact that he did it with this felt shoe. Stama Tanya, we already have a brisa where it was anonymous, where it said in that brisa on the bottom of Friday's daf, Kuf Beis Amabez, it says Bekava Kita B'Moku B'Smichas HaRaglayim. And we had attributed to Rabbi Meir, but he said if you did it with this amputated foot or with the mok, with this felt shoe, then it's okay. So he's not following an anonymous position. He has a brisa that supports him. And also, Elila Stamatanya. And if he says that he did it at night, he also has an anonymous position that says it's okay, because our Mishnah here says it says that it's okay at night. So therefore it's not that's certainly not the problem. El Yachidi. So what's the issue? The issue is that he did it without a cord. El Yachidi kakashule. If the fact that he did it as an individual, so if your question is El Yachidi Kikashule, if your problem with it is that he did it as an individual, how is he able to do it this way? Because that's an individual's position. It's just a minority position. If you do the chalitza with 2 or 3, and then you find out that one of the judges was disqualified, they're a relative, then the chalitza is disqualified. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yochanan Asandler, Machshir, and Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yochanan Asandler actually say that under those circumstances, it's kosher. So we see that we see from here that most people say, the majority, the anonymous position is that it's disqualified if you don't have a cord of 3. It was only Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yochanan say it's okay. And there was once an incident where a person did the chalitza just by himself with his with the Yevama in the prison. You see, we have another prison reference today for you, Lincoln. These people were in prison and they were trying to do the chalitza, and they came before Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said it's okay. The Gemara is going to talk about how they were able to ask Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva was also in prison. It's part of our mythology as a Jewish people is the dedication we took to our causes even when we were in prison. Rabbi Akiva was studying Torah even when he was in prison. So the law is not like those people who said that it's okay if it's less than 3. So how was he able to say, how was Rabbi Bar Chia allowed to do the chalitza as just in front of one person? He did it by himself when we just said it's not okay. So the Gemara gives 2 answers. So the Gemara says. So the Gemara says, how did he do it? How did he do it as an individual? So the Gemara answers that actually wasn't that he was that what was Shmuel bothered by, not by the fact that he did it by himself, but all of the positions, all of them were following individual positions. The Tanya Amar Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi Ani Raisi, Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, Shachotz ben Mok, B'Yachidi Balayla, and he says, I saw that he did the chalitza with a mok, and he did it individual, and he did it at night. So we see from here that this was just a position of Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. So all of these things were done at night, and all of these things were done by the individual, and that was what bothered Shmuel. So it says, now if you did it with the small, if you did it with the left foot, chalitza psua, the chalitza is disqualified. Gemara says, my time the rabbanon. What's the reason why the rabbis say if you did the chalitza on your left foot, it's disqualified? So Amar Ula, by the way, so Amar Ula said, now he said, what about if you're a lefty? Which foot do you do it on? We discussed this earlier. If you're a lefty, it's a dispute. Some say you're supposed to do it on both feet to do the chalitza there to make certain, and others say that if you're a lefty, that there's a minority opinion that you can't do chalitza at all. You'd have to do yibum. Anyway, so the Gemara says, what's the reason why the rabbis say that if you do it on your left foot, it's no good? Gemara explains, Yalfinon regel mi mitzora. We compare the regel to the mitzora, to the leper. We compare the regel to the mitzora because it says by the mitzora, it says that you have to put it on the blood by the mitzora to purify him on his big right toe. So therefore, and since by the chalitza it says since it's the same word appears, just by the mitzora it's on the right toe, so too by the chalitza it's on the right foot. So just like there it's on the right one, here too it's on the right one. Rabbi Eliezer, so how does it come Rabbi Eliezer defending which version? Why does he say that you could also do it on the left one? Does Rabbi Eliezer not learn out by comparing it to the mitzora, the left foot by the mitzora? But Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Minayin Ritzia. Ritzia is what? What's the Ritzia? Anybody know what that's a reference to? The Ritzia. So Roi says that it says in the pasuk that if a person says, I want to remain a slave, it says in Parashas Mishpatim, it says, V'ratza Adonav es azno b'martzeach. If a person in Evet Ivri decides that he wants to remain a slave, you have to take the awl and you pierce his ear. V'ratza Adonav es azno b'martzeach. You pierce it with an awl. And so therefore it says, also the word there, it says, so how do we know it has to be done with the right foot? How do we know? Does Rabbi Eliezer really not compare regel to a mitzora? How do we know that the ritzia of the evet, that the piercing of his ear has to be done with the right ear? Nemer kan ozen, nemer lalon ozen. He compares the piercing of the ear of the evet to the mitzora's piercing of the ear. Malalon yamim, malalon ozen yamin, afkan yamin. Just like by the mitzora it's his right ear, so too by the slave it has to be done with the right ear. So we see from here that just like he expounds, Rabbi Eliezer compares ozen, so too over here he compares the chalitza he should compare the chalitza to the mitzora and say it can only be done with the right foot. So Gemara explains, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rav Yochanan, Muchafes Hashita. You know what? We recorded it backwards, that we have to switch the positions. What does that mean to switch the positions? So we'd have to say that Rabbi Eliezer is the one who says it's disqualified with the left foot, and the Rabban are the one who say it's okay. Rabbah gives a different answer. Rabbah says, no, Olam lo tepech. Ozen mufni, regel lo mufni. He says, mufni means that the word is unnecessary, unneeded, and therefore the words ozen are extra, and you could use it to compare mitzora to a slave, to an evet ivri, to a Hebrew slave. But the words regel are not extra, and therefore Rabbi Eliezer doesn't compare them. The Gemara says, "V'chilo mufni my pircha." So if the words are not free, you could compare them unless there's a question saying why you don't compare them. So what's the reason why you don't compare them here? Gemara says, Iko and Mifrach. You could say that it's not a good comparison to compare a Mitzora to a Chalitza. Why? Because Mala Mitzora, Shakin Ton, 8 zeros, Ve'ezov, which need to last. The Mitzora, in order to be purified, needs all these things that the Chalitza doesn't. It needs cedar wood. It needs hyssop and crimson thread. So therefore, you can't compare a Mitzora to the chalitza. So the Gemara says, okay, we're going to now see which parts of the chalitza ceremony are essential. Gemara says, chaltza v'rakika. Let's say she spit. Let's say she removed the shoe and then she spit on the ground of a lo kara, but she did not read the passage from the Torah that describes the chalitza ceremony. Chalitza sakshera. It's going to be a valid chalitza. But let's say kara v'rakika of a lo chaltza, but let's say she read it and she spit, but she did not remove the shoe. Chalitzasa pesua. Then we're going to say if she read it, you have to keep track of these, or you're going to lose it. So we'll repeat it again from the beginning. If she removed the shoe and then she spit, but she didn't read it, then it's okay. But if she read it, then spit of a lo chaltza, but she never actually removed the shoe, that's no good. Chalitzasa pesua. But let's say Cholza v'kara v'lo rakata. Let's say she removed the shoe and she read the passage, but she didn't spit. Rabbi Eliezer Omer chalitzasa psula. Rabbi Eliezer says it's no good without the spit. Rabbi Akiva Omer chalitzasa ksher. Rabbi Akiva says it's kosher. So Amar le Rabbi Eliezer. So Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says. So Rabbi Eliezer says, Kacha Yaseh. Why does Rabbi Eliezer say that if you don't have the spit, it's disqualified? Because it says, this shall be done. That's what it says in the Torah. Kacha Yaseh. This shall be done. This shall be done to the one who doesn't build the brother's house. Which means, Kol Davar Shum Ma'aseh Ma'akev. Any action is essential. She doesn't spit, it's no good. Whereas Amalei Rabbi Akiva Misham Raya, that's where you don't want to bring me a proof from that fact. Rabbi Akiva says Misham Raya, that from there you want to bring a proof that the spit is essential. It says Kacha Yasela Ish. Anything that is done to the man, which means say Gol Davar Shu Ma'aseh Ish. Anything that is an action upon a man is essential. But the spit is not an action on the man. That's a spitting on the ground. So therefore, it's not an action on the man. So therefore, it's not essential. That's why Rabbi Akiva says that if you don't spit, it's still a valid chalitza. Acheresh shenechlatz. What's a cheresh? Yes, Roy. Speak up. I can't hear you on the Zoom. There's a crowd on the Zoom. They want to hear you.
The reading, is not nice to everyone.
So we're going to see that, but it's at this point in our mission, it seems that the reading of the verses is not required. The Gemara is going to discuss the reading, who has to read, and the man, the woman, the bezdin, the audience. But the Gemara is going to get into that. But first, the mission talks about a cheresh. A cheresh in today we translate it as deaf. In rabbinic literature, it's deaf mute, and they believe that person had no intelligence. So the cheresh and nichlatz, now we know differently. We now know that such people have intelligence. So if it was a cheresh or chereshes, these people who are deaf mutes or a minor, it's all disqualified. Let's say there's a minor girl who does the chalitza. Then she has to do it again when she gets older. If she doesn't do it again, it's going to be disqualified. Yes.
Why would it if she has to do it again, then doesn't that just mean when she does it when she's a minor, she's invalid?
So that's a very excellent question. So the point is, meaning to say as follows, that let's go back and say this line. In the first place, when we're talking about they're disqualified,
they can't marry anyone they want.
The first case we say when it says psula, it means that she has to get another chalitza from the other brothers. Meaning say it's not enough to do it. but she's also going to be disqualified to marry that man. It's effective enough to say that she can't marry that man, but she's going to require another chalitza. In this case, what do we say here? We say, so look at the Tosfos. Tosfos asks the question. Tosfos, actually, we're going to get to that Tosfos on tomorrow's daf. Tosfos asks exactly Isaac's question. Why specifically by a minor does the Mishnah say that she has to do the chalitza again when she gets older, but by a minor girl does it say it, but by a minor boy, the Mishnah doesn't write it. And so Tosfos asked exactly Isaac's question. Isaac was mechavin to the question of Tosfos, which is on tomorrow's daf, but he jumped ahead. And so Tosfos answers that since the whole law of the chalitza of a minor chalitza that is disqualified is not written explicitly in the Torah, but we only learn it out by comparing it to the katan, to a minor boy, which we're going to learn out from the Gemara on Daf Kufay Amud Beis. Therefore, the Mishnah writes this extra language to say that it's biblical and not just by rabbinic law to teach us this idea. So it's exactly Isaac's question. Okay, so then the Gemara says, Cholza b'shnayim o b'shlosha. Let's say you do the chalitza with a cord of 2 or 3. And then one of them was discovered to be, one of the 3 was discovered to be disqualified. Then under those circumstances, we're going to say chalitza psula, it's disqualified. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yochanan, Sandal, Machshirin, they allow it. Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yochanan, the shoemaker. One time, these people did the chalitza on their own. They did the chalitza amongst themselves. In the prison. And the incident came before Rabbi Akiva of the Hechshir. We're going to see that Rabbi Akiva was also in prison at the time. So Amarava, so now that Rav has established that the reading is not, now that the Mishnah has established that the reading of the passage of the chalitza ceremony is not essential. That's how you can't speak. That's how you're unable to speak. Then it's a valid chalitza. Okay, that's a very important point. By the way, there are certain aspects of the Torah where you can't. There's certain aspects. Like after I had my vocal surgery, so I wasn't able to speak for 3 days each time. So how do you do the mitzvah of Shema? You have to say the Shema. How do you do it? It's an elaim. So the halacha is you have to hear somebody else reading it. Okay. So the Gemara says, so is that really the case? The Gemara challenges Rava. Rava says, so since we say that the reading is not essential, therefore, if you can't speak, you can still do chalitza. But didn't we learn Tanan that if you do this chalitza from the deaf mute, it's no good. My time, isn't the reason why the cheresh who does the chalitza is no good? Isn't it because he can't read? The Gemara says no, that's not the reason. The reason is mishum delav b'nei deyaninu. He's not. It's not that he can't read, but it's just he's not considered to have a sound mind. So the Gemara says, well, if the problem is that he's not of sound mind, well, if that's the case, a person who's mute also is not of sound mind. So the Gemara says, why do you say somebody who's mute is not of sound mind? Why do you say that the person who's mute also shouldn't be able to do it according to Rava because he's not of sound mind? So the Gemara gives a very interesting answer, which I think has a lot of ramifications for how we view the deaf mute today. So the Gemara says, no, the person who's mute, it's not mute because he's not smart. It's just that their mouth doesn't work. So now today we prove that the cheresh is actually a very good test case of whether halacha adapts when we have new reality. And we see that because this person, they used to think that the deaf mute people were dumb. But now we know that they're maybe much smarter. Helen Keller changed everything. So therefore, we have to look at that in halacha. But you say that the Elaim is obviously smart, he just can't speak. Mara says, So Gemara says, but what's the reason why the Mishnah disqualifies the Cheresh and the Chareshes from Chalitza? It's not because they're not B'nai Deya, but it's not because they're not smart, but because they can't say or say. And so therefore, we see from here that the Elaim should also be disqualified. So Gemara says, "Oh, Kiyidmar de Rava Seifa." No, Rava's statement that the Elaim could do it was said on the concluding clause, and this is what he said. We have to change what he said. They are going to be disqualified. All these cases, the deaf, mute, or the minor. The Amar Rava, and Rava says, Hashad Amras Kriya Ma'akfa. Now that we say that the reading is essential, like Roy said, an Elaim and Yevamos who do it, the Chalitza is disqualified. And Elaim and Yevamos who do it, they're disqualified. Umas Nisan, in our Mishnah that says, that you didn't do that, if you didn't read it, it's kosher. How can it be? We just is Rebbe Zera. So this is the famous sheet of Rebbe Zera throughout Shas. So we have to understand this now, and you'll know it throughout Shas. A very, very important principle. Understand what's going on here. The Mishnah says that if you don't read from the verses, it's a valid chalitza. But we said that in the Mishnah that if the cheresh or the chareshes doesn't do it, it's no good. And why? Because they have to be able to read it. So why does our Mishnah say if you don't read it, it's okay? What's going on? So the Gemara explains our Mishnah follows the position of what Rebbe Zera says. What does Rebbe Zera says? This is the shita which Rebbe Zera first appears in Menachot, so it appears throughout Shas. That if, let's say, a person comes and says, I'm going to give to the Beis HaMikdash, he says, I'm going to give a grain offering that has 60 isaron of flour. 60 isaron of flour. He has to bring it all in one utensil. The utensil has to be big enough to hold 60 isaron. But let's say he says, I'm going to bring a mincha of 61. He has to bring it in two separate utensils. You can't bring it in a utensil of 60 if he's bringing 61. Why? It has to be mixed with the oil. It has to be be capable of being mixed. And if you're going to bring 61 in a utensil of 60, the oil is not going to mix well with the flour. And so the Gemara says, why do we care if the oil doesn't mix well? We already said that if a person brings the flour and the oil and he doesn't mix it, it's still okay. So why are you going to tell me if he brings it in a bowl where it won't mix well, it's okay? You don't even need to mix it. So Rabbi Zera says the shita, it's a very, very important shita throughout the Shas. He says, yes, you don't need to mix it, but it needs to be raw. It needs to be capable of being mixed. The actual mixing is not essential, but it has to be capable of being mixed. So too here, the actual reading, Roy, to answer your question, is not essential, but it has to be capable of being read. So if you didn't read it, it's okay. But if you are not capable of reading it, it's not okay. And that's the point. That's we call a roy labila. So let me just finish this line and then we'll go to Dov Bear's question. Anything that's capable of being mixed, the mixing is not essential. But if it's not capable of being mixed, then it's not essential. Yeah, Dov Bear.
Nowadays, technically say braille would be like for a deaf mute person, or if they use that, they would be competent.
Right, so that's why we say today, he's asking a question about the deaf mute person today. So deaf mute, I mean, if a person is deaf mute, doesn't mean like they're reading it. Doesn't mean, right, if they're using braille for reading. So does braille count as reading for the chalitza ceremony? So does braille count? That's a tremendous question. We'd have to ask a posik, but it's a question: is that considered reading?
It's Rav Zev question.
Yeah. Well, after we hear from Lincoln, we'll call Rav Zev. We'll ask him. Maybe we'll call Rav Zev first because he won't pick up, and then we'll leave the question for him. By the way, I want to mention that tomorrow morning, in honor of the federal holiday, Rav Zev is going to give a shiur from 9 to 9:15 on Zoom. Everybody can join us for that. It's the regular Monday morning session tomorrow where we do the Daf Yomi at 8 and davening at 7:10. But at 9 a.m., Rav Zev is going to give a shiur on Kiddushay Taos. We came across that a couple of days ago on the Daf. So Rav Zev is going to give that shiur on mistaken betrothal. Let's just finish the Daf here today. We'll just do 2 more minutes and then we'll ask some of these questions. So Shochulei Avu Adishmol Yevamos Sharakika Tachlots. You know what? Actually, we'll stop here because I see it's 9:30. Let's stop the daf here, and we'll pick this up